Hello and welcome to Orbiting Brick. And today's video, it's a bit delayed, I'm sorry for that. I had some very serious computer issues that should hopefully have been resolved now, fingers crossed. Yeah, I was able to record this video once all that was settled. And so as you can see, we have a modified Saturn V. The fins have been removed from the first stage. The S4B has some insulation on it, and also the S1C has had its tankage slightly increased in length. And well, two of those changes are because I just thought it would look better, and the other one, adding some additional fuel to the first stage, is for an actual reason. Because this is a different solar system. I am still using the New Horizons planet pack, where Carbon is a moon of the gas giant Sona, and the Mun is also a moon of Sona, which means that the Delta V requirements, if I can get my words out correctly, the Delta V requirements are different. Due to for the Bluedog Design Bureau Saturn V, the one I'm using, it already has too much Delta V in its first two stages. Yeah, I gained like five different shots of it launching. There's also some other changes to the craft that will become apparent later, and well, all of those relate to its main purpose, because if you saw my previous video, you know that I stranded 3 Kerbals by accident following some unfortunate engine failures. Yeah, 3 Kerbals are stranded on the Mun in a LK-700 lander, and I need to rescue them. And this is a rescue mission. And you might say, we have 2 Kerbals on board already, and the Apollo capsule only holds 3, so we won't be able to, there's not enough space. However, this is a Apollo capsule modified to seat 5 crew members, so yeah, we'll be able to carry all 3 rescues. And also, the Lunar Module has been extended to, well, it's been upgraded to not only not require crew piloting on descent, but it also has 3 seats in the ascent module, so it can autonomously land and pick up the 3 Kerbals. Now, launch so far has been pretty standard for a Saturn V. We have first stage SN, the ignition of the second stage launch motors, then the second stage engines, and now we have jetson of the interstage and launch escape tower. Any second now. There we go. And yeah, as I said, Bluedog Design Bureau Saturn V has too much Delta V in its first 2 stages, so yeah, we don't even ignite the S4B until we reach orbit. But that gives us plenty of Delta V for the interesting maneuvers we need to perform in a space around Sona. Because this is much like a interplanetary maneuver in a normal stock system. And yeah, I'll be performing a mid-course correction, which will mean we do a total of 3 burns. And thankfully the S4B, the JT for it, actually has 3 ignitions. As I've mostly skipped through the maneuver plotting. I mean, for a slightly inclined orbit, since the LK-700 is stranded at a inclination. It's not exactly on the equator, it's a bit north of it. So once all maneuvers are plotted, we can jettison the S2, ignite the S4B. Which, yeah, that's a nice staging sequence there. You can also enable the RCS, which for some reason didn't enable by itself, and get a view inside the capsule, where you can see those, not only the spare seat in the main row, but those 2 extra seats down below. Also, I didn't realize this got an upgrade IVA, so yeah, we got some nice, some very ahistorical monitors there. Yeah, we complete the burn using RCS, again to conserve the limited ignitions. Also, I realize, yeah, it looks like there's better insulation on this S4B. It is just cosmetic, and so it's not the same level of boil-off, but the boil-off in Bluedog Design Bureau is, it's pretty forgiving, so I actually won't have to worry about cooling at all during this. Yes, we leave Kerbal behind. And what I was trying to say, there's some nice views of the city lights down below. And we already now move to Space Round Sauna, where we perform our mid-course adjustment. This fine-tunes our encounter with the Mon, which means we'll get that preferable inclination that should bring us just over the landing site. And it's a pretty short burn, and again we completed using the RCS. And this entire time I've started the fuel cell on the service module, since otherwise we'd actually run out of electric charge. And I'm actually a bit surprised that we didn't need to deploy the main antenna on the service module. We were able to communicate just fine using the antennas that are currently exposed. It's the very small, non-deployable antennas. I'm not sure why I'm sounding so much over describing these antennas. Anyways, we now start heading towards the Mon and fall perfectly in line with Kerbal Shadow. I did not plan for this. I don't know how I could have planned for this. Yeah, for a good portion of our approach to Mon, we fall perfectly behind Kerbal and lose access to the sun. Thankfully, again, we're using a fuel cell. And now we approach the Mon, and I use the S4B for its final burn, inserting us into orbit around the Mon, aiming for a orbit with a periapsis of 36 kilometers, and an apoapsis hopefully somewhere near that. Wasn't being too precise, to be honest. And there we go, we should start launch pretty soon now. Any second now. There we go. Yeah, it's a fairly long burn, depleting basically all the resources in the S4B, and we complete that using RCS. So orbit is slightly eccentric, but it should be suitable for our purposes. And so now we should be able to address first the panels covering the Lunar Module and dock and extract it from the S4B. There we go. And now we can use the RCS on the S4B to first get away from the spacecraft, and then deorbit it to prevent a cluttering of this lunar space. And yeah, it's gonna take a while with RCS, so let's skip over that. And let's do our final checks on the Lunar Module. I've already deployed the antennas and various other things. And as I said, it's gonna be a landing uncrewed. So yeah, our Kerbals are staying on the command module. And also I transferred some battery over since I actually didn't even realize this, but the Lunar Module, it only has battery power. There's no fuel cells on it. And yeah, I was just checking the life support there. We have basically just a few hours left for. Well, it's not just. It's not that we have just a few hours left. Oh. Here's the thing: the values that are running out for the stranded crew are values that don't lead to immediate death. But when HAB and just away from home time run out, that's probably not the correct terminology, and you can see the values there. when those are out, the crew will just refuse to work. The Kerbals are set as tourists, which is not ideal because that means they can't EVA and they can't control the craft, which will mean they'd be stranded on their lander and unable to head over to the rescue craft, which again is not ideal. However, we're able to, we're pretty safely away from that time running out. And undocking was a bit more extreme than intended, but we're able to start our landing. And I have to admit, most of the landing was spent looking at the map view, trying to get a close encounter with the stranded lander, where we get within 1 kilometer of it upon landing. I skipped through most of the landing. And also, I also didn't realize this until performing this mission, but we only have three ignitions on the Lunar Module descent engine, so I tried to conserve that as much as possible, and we would actually land with one ignition to spare. With this landing, it's not the best. A bit rough. But there we are on the surface. So now we can go over to the stranded LK700 and get our Kerbals on EVA. And again, there's 3 crew members. And as you'll see pretty soon, basically, so 2 of them, their EVA pack does have monopropellant, and they can just EVA pack over to the lander, which is pretty quick. However, one of the Kerbals, for some reason, doesn't have monopropellant, and so they'll have to walk. Now, first we're EVAing, I actually can't read the name of the Kerbal on my preview, but we're EVAing somebody over. Again, some nice views of that parallax ground scatter. Yeah, we can board. And as you can see, on the IVA, you can see there's 3 seats. And now we can just wait for the other 2 to get over here. Here's another Kerbal EVAing over. Which, same story, no issues here. And now, here's the 3rd and final Kerbal. And again, he does not have any monopropellant on his EVA pack, so he needs to walk. And for some reason, I had to reinstall parallax, so the scatter position's updated. Which first of all caused the flag to fall over, and only as this Kerbal leaves does that basketball that was deployed during the video. Only now does it decide to start rolling for no apparent reason. It also seems to be rolling uphill, so yeah, it's a bit concerning. Now we can start walking over to the lander. And yeah, I had to do this all in real time. I guess the parallax ground scatter did make this a bit interesting. And right now I'm using the first person view from Holcam VDS. Yeah, this took a fair while. Eventually we do reach the lander. And here you can actually see the the remote control stuff on the descent stage. You can climb up onto a ladder. This is the first time I realized that plaque is on the Bluedog Design Bureau lander. And then we can board once we stop staring at that plaque. And now, these crew members have absolutely no experience flying this craft. However, they now need to figure it out as they now need to rendezvous with the command module. Yeah, you can see us standing there, and first, I mess up and start pitching the wrong way. Not quite sure how I managed that. Eventually, we'll figure it out, and we will start to head the correct direction. You know, the delta V on this is pretty scarce. We basically have like 40 meters per second left once we reach orbit. So yeah, there's not really much space for error on this. And also trying to keep the inclination correct. I'll completely mess up and we'll be a few degrees off once we reach orbit, which has to be corrected. Yeah, for this entire ascent I thought I was going to run out of delta V before reaching orbit. However, we had just barely enough. And yeah, not much else to really say, fairly standard descent here. And coming forwards to performing a maneuver, I use the RCS as much as possible, again to conserve the 42 meters per second we have left. Over here, what you eventually get a very nice encounter. And you see there, we're able to get our intersect below 1 kilometer, and eventually we do dock. Except there is an antenna I forgot to retract, which prevents that. Well, we can quickly go and retract that antenna. And once that's done, we can redock. And now the crew can transfer over into the command module. And using the free view there, which isn't working the best with the Bluedog Design Bureau parts. For some reason, you can see through the command module. Not sure why that's happening. Yeah, we're able to transfer. And so, as you can see, whilst all the supplies are looking good, our crew members, well, some of them will refuse to work in 2 days, which is a problem since the only maneuvers I was able to figure out to get the crew home will take us, I believe, 4 days. So yeah, halfway through, and 2 of the crew members will just refuse to work. And to try and hopefully have time for running out quicker, I am keeping the Lunar Module attached, since that gives them slightly more living space. But yeah, we leave behind the Mon. And now, it's a matter of waiting in space for a few days until the correct the correct moment to transfer to Kerbal. As you can see, 2 of our crew members are now refusing to work and are labeled as tourists. It's Alan Koppel and Dmitry Kostov, I believe. Those are the ones who are who have decided to stop working, which there's another Kerbal who was stranded who decided to keep working. Not sure why their timer was so different. Anyways, we do eventually reach the correct moment and perform our maneuver to return to Kerbal. Absolutely beautiful shot with the craft in front of Sona. And now we return to Kerbal. And I check one more time that I didn't accidentally leave anybody in the Lunar Module. And fairly soon, once we reach 1,000 kilometers from the surface, we'll just end that Lunar Module. Yeah, periapsis I aimed for is 36 kilometers. I choose that for no reason other than that's what I usually do, and as you can see from trajectories, that means our max accelerating G-force isn't that bad. and we splash down in the ocean, which is ideal. And we just in the Lunar Module. And then followed by the Service Module, which for some reason is the only place where you have supplies, so crew are technically starving the moment we detach the Command Module. But we're able to maintain control and can successfully re-enter. And there are some nice views of those Firefly re-entry effects. And you can see the service module exploding. And just getting some views of the plasma there. It's extremely bright now. And it's just speeding up to re-entry. Not much really to say here. Just to check in on the various screens there on that monitor. Everything seems to be operating as expected. And now re-entry passes. And so we can jettison the forward heat shield on time this time. Which will fail in its own way. But the parachute does survive. And also as we go there in the atmosphere, I guess like USI life support as the Kerbals return to service. If they refuse to work, the moment they return to Kerbin. I'm not sure I need to explain that, you literally saw it happen. Yeah, we deployed rogues and then main shoots. And finally we splashed down, having successfully recovered all crew members. So I now have no Kerbals stranded. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This was a really fun mission to do. I want to thank you for watching. Yes, I can subscribe, and goodbye.